My name is Bob McNeil. I will humbly serve as moderator of this program titled The Future of Spoken Word Poetry. Throughout various eras, writers always shared their words aloud. Depending on the location, some were called griots, tale singers, jongleurs, or minstrels. That very prevalent tradition continued with the Beat generation. Decades later, the Nuyorican Poets Cafe brought verbalized verses to the barrio. Around that time in the West Indies, specifically Jamaica, dub poetry gave the genre reggae rhythms. Getting back to the beats for a minute, although not mentioned as much as others, Bob Kaufman created his poems extemporaneously. Today, rappers would call that freestyling. Speaking of rap, never forget how much it had a profound influence on modern day spoken word artists. The slam movement, MTV, and Def Poetry Jam acknowledged the musical style's importance. On this program, while considering all that history, I will have a discussion about the future of spoken word poetry with writers who are making important contributions right now. I feel honored to introduce these gifted voices. Venus Jones, an accomplished actress, best-selling author, professor, TEDx speaker, and the host of Soulful Journey, produced 4 spoken word albums and the following 3 books: She Rose, Lyrics for Langston, and Kwanzaa, Living on Principle. Her work has been featured in many anthologies and journals in the United States and internationally. Not only that, she opened for Def Poetry on Broadway. Tim Staley is a poet based in Las Cruces, New Mexico. He was born in Montgomery, Alabama in 1975. He founded Grandma Moses Press in 1992 and continues to serve as editor. He is faculty at Oregon Mountain High School. Furthermore, he just completed a full-length poetry collection titled The Pieces You Have Left. Christena Williams is a Jamaican poet, multiple award-winning author, youth volunteer, self-publisher, historian, and philosopher. She is the recipient of the 2020 International Spoken Word Artist of the Year Award from the Chicago-based organization Poet, People of Extraordinary Talent, and Black Ice Productions. Moreover, she holds a BA in History and Philosophy from the University of the West Indies. Her book, Pearls Among Stones, was awarded the Prime Minister's National Youth Awards for Excellence in Arts and Culture. Welcome, panel. Let's start off with this question. What is spoken word poetry to you? Venus, share your opinion with us.
Sure. Spoken word poetry to me is, when I think of it, I think of griots. I also think of spoken word as an extension of hip hop. When I think of hip hop, I think of the elements of DJs and I think of graffiti artists and what we also used to call the MC. But you know, the MC became what some would say a rapper, and rappers weren't always the same as MCs. MCs could move the crowd, and spoken word artists are put in that same category. And I feel like spoken word, when I think of it, I also think of at a time in America, North America, and the United States, we used to call spoken word even all things from the oral tradition and from you know, the collective culture of African history. I think of comedy even, because when there were Grammy Awards given out, sometimes comedy was put in the spoken word category. So I feel like when I think of spoken word, I think of all of those things. And as a spoken word artist myself, I think of just the ability to be able to be one with your word and embody words so that they can dazzle an audience and make people really think about the power of words.
Well said, well said. Tim, tell us your take on the subject.
Yes, really nice answer, Venus. You know, Venus was talking about embodying the words and getting through to the audience. I think that any poet is that's publishing and wants to share their work is trying to affect an audience just with their words. But I think that performance poetry or spoken word kind of pushes it to the next level of the stage. I mean, the simple answer is a page versus the stage, and I think stage starts to get to this thing we're talking about today. But to be more explicit in what I'm saying is it's poetry in time, in the same way that if you are trying to do a garage band with your friends and make music, you're kind of aware of time happening, and you can use that time to weave in and out of where this beat kind of is. I believe there's a beat to performance poetry and spoken word, and then just really trying to get this audience connection through using things that lots of people on the stage use: eye contact, voice, body presence, how you're holding your body, using all those things to help communicate what you're trying to say, in addition to the words, which you've already thought about and trying to do your best at, but then you're using your entire body to highlight and accentuate.
Mm-hmm. Well done, well done. Christena, give us your insights.
Would be similar to the poetry in Jamaica, because spoken word poetry is a very like a newly thing for Jamaicans. Like if you went on the road and you met like a poet and you say, hey, what kind of poet you are, they will say I'm a dub poet, because that's what started it. It's more like for the older generations, but that's what I grew up on. So like dub poetry, it began in like the 1970s, I believe, and it started with like individuals like Linton Quaison Johnson and Ukwanuru. And as I would listen to the radio, and I will listen like people like Mota Baruka, and then later I will listen like Louis Bennett, which is a different type of poet. So I grew up with dub poetry, which is very rhythmic, and it's storytelling, and it came out of dub music, and it was about basically speaking against injustice, and really. So I see dub poetry and spoken word as basically like word, sound, and power, we say in Jamaica. So the word, when you go on stage, you entertain, which is education and entertainment come together, because now you have a platform to basically speak for the people, and you're speaking about issues that really matter. So whether it's religious, political, whatever you want to speak. So I see it as something that is very spiritual, and I see it as a mission of activism. Not just going on stage and just entertaining people. It's about going out there to use my words as a powerful instrument to enact change. That's how I view it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well said. Here is our next question. What is your spoken word poetry style? Christena, let's start off with you this time.
My style would be a variety. Like I can, write any way possible. But to narrow it down, I would say I'm very good in, like a free verse freestyle, or probably like I would say like a rap type of thing. But I like the themes of, social injustice, like political, religious, and anything that you would raise, and talking about my people, African people. I'm all about all people really, because I'm like a mixed heritage pretty much. But I really when I in Jamaica here, like I have to talk about what I see, and I have to bring it to light, especially to my young people. So I know that I have a platform, and I have to use the best style that is best possible to really share all that I know with my friends and audiences.
Can you give us a sample of your work?
Well, so I have this one titled Bloodbath. Do not even care if I live or die. Feeling disrespected. Everybody saying we so bad. Blame us, blame them. There's a bad guy for the rap. No one takes up responsibility until Susan takes up a pistol. Now everybody dead. So-called humanist screams, it must be the cartoons, it must be social media, it must be the games, it must be the action movies. Why was it not us, the society? The society who treats us unkind, rape our mothers and fathers, slaughter our brothers and sisters, burn our friends on the altar in the name of religion, in the name of purity. Why not society? The society who hates my black skin, my Nubian melanin, but love my people's music, love to watch us on the track, love when we entertain like black faces masquerading in the circus. Was it not society? Was it not society who taught me to hate, segregate, saying we equal but separate? Was it not society who told me my beliefs were not important? Culture was. False gods, false religions and cults, so-called beauty standards that are not even average, measured in the beholder's eyes. Why is society so appalled and astonished when we are so angry? Where was society when the youths of today was screaming out, bleeding out, dying out? George Floyd, Maradine, Jasmine Dean. We had to protect our interests because we had to keep the secret going. We had to protect the systems that held my people back because we're black. All traditions that were never beneficial to the opium of my people who are so brainwashed about being African, that they divide among themselves, creating hierarchy of light skin and dark skin, house slaves against plantation slaves in the 21st century. Got that stereotype, got that in your headspace, so cracked up, mental illness. Only the strong will survive. Only the ones who are so broken, only the ones who are so broken, pressed down by societal rules, can rise up from the ashes and be heard, because they refuse, like their ancestors, to be tamed and named and left voiceless. We refuse for them to mentally chain us. We refuse to be their population controlled samples. We refuse their conspiracy theory about our origins. We refuse to become our worst enemies, as it only leads to war. Never let them take your soul, because if you do, you will end up 6 feet deep, cold. Thank you.
Great, great, great work. Tim, tell us your opinion about this one.
Hey, I love that poem. That was really striking, Christina. Thank you for sharing that. There was like a searing phrasing and tone there. Really loved that. You wanted to know what my style of slam and performance poetry is?
Spoken word poetry in general, yes.
I have a academic kind of upbringing and entry into this, and it was in college and graduate school when I learned about slam and performance poetry and kind of fell in love with it, and then just really ran with it because I loved the whole idea that you can just get more people. I just want to get more people, and I noticed that when some poets are just looking down at their paper, they lose some of that possibility of connection. And so I would say my style starts from just a very place of honesty, trying to be as honest as I can. And then like once I'm in that on the stage, I want to just capture and try to remember to go as slow as possible. So I think our tendency is to like speed up when our heart is going and you're real excited about that. Oh God, this is it. I've been waiting for. But just go slow and yeah, and hopefully have an impact. I would hope that's my style. Yeah. And sometimes I milk the Southern accent. Sometimes I try to play it straight.
That's fine. Now, do you have a piece to share?
Yeah. So, George Floyd was mentioned in the last poem, and I ended up going to a Black Lives Matter event in my city. So this is just what went down last summer it's called my first Black Lives Matter event, Plaza de las Cruces, New Mexico, September 12, 2020. The restaurant patio on the corner was at capacity and clapping emphatically for a white woman and her accompanist after their set of covers, including Tracy Chapman, not Fast Car, but the one that goes, "Give me one reason to stay here and I'll turn right back around." I looked around, I didn't see any Black people. I didn't see any police either, but so many men cruising down Main Street, revving their engines, half zombie half yeoman farmer. And you see, yeoman farmers were the farmers in Alabama that were too poor for slaves, but don't worry, you see, they were fiercely independent, and they are still here. I saw a man heading south in a Conestoga wagon into what is now known as South Carolina. He had the Bible in one hand and Shakespeare in the other. Bell Hooks said white slave owners punished their slaves regularly for simply looking at them. I was in the basement of the Sigma Nu fraternity house in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and the pledge master turned to me and said, "Never make eye contact with an active." Eyelashes, well, they last about 150 days. Y'all know Stone Mountain? Your Robert E. Lee's as tall as a 9-story building. Jeff Davis's thumb is the size of a sofa. It's the largest bas relief sculpture in the world. Well, it can't be that hard to uncarve. The Miracle Whip, potato salad, the baked beans, the stewed okra, the macaroni and cheese with the breadcrumb topping smelling like dead bodies. The human nose can detect about 1 trillion smells. A swimming child approaches our feet from the bottom of a mushroom cloud. She opens her mouth, and inside is a Confederate blood diamond. This is the closest I've ever come to being inside a Black person's house. My therapist said, white guilt, that doesn't help the movement.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Tim. Greatly appreciated.
It's a great
Venus.
honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Venus, define your spoken word poetry style.
Well, my spoken word poetry style, I have to say, I began in the theater when I was 9. So I have a poem that kind of speaks to that, but you know, a lot of my work, I wanted to uplift. I want to be known for healing words and courageous conversations. And one of my most popular poems is called Amen. And I'm thinking, do I do that piece right now? But I'm also thinking, I have another poem because the theme of the Harlem Book Fair this year is global. I am. So I was thinking, man, like, what's global? What brings us together? And I think of trees. Trees are everywhere. And, you know, because trees are everywhere, so are Black people, and so are, you know, people of African descent. We're everywhere. And some people act surprised when they see us, if they see us in a certain place. But when I was growing up, in the movement, they would sing a song when everybody was holding hands of different colors, and they would say, and they would think about that tree that's next to the water. And they would say, just like a tree that's planted by the water, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved, just like that tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved.
Beautiful.
I think of that song, and I think of my grandmother who just passed away. She was 100 years old. And she raised me. Talk about a grandmother. And she said she was going to pass when she was 100. So she's the kind of woman that would say what she means and she meant what she said. So here's the thing. I think about roots. I think about trees. I think about all of these things. I think about family. But every time I recite this poem, it takes me to a different place. But I'm going to go ahead and just recite it for you. That tree.
Can we hear a poem now?
That tree over there you see. That tree, it keeps whispering knowledge to me. It's a mover and a shaker, but grounded by its maker, that tree. I can see that its roots are long, sap sweeter than a love song. How many lifetimes has it seen? I know the weather must have been mean, because that tree, it knows my name and it knows my rhyme, but it has no measure for time. Only respect to seasons as it grows. That tree knows when to let go is when the wind blows. Wait a minute, you can't see. You can't see the forest because of the tree. Well, take a step back with me because I don't want you to miss the beauty of this big family. And as we move in closer again, you'll see that there's beauty and there's a family inside that tree. Several species finding comfort, from birds to ants, squirrels, and even a pesky flea. And without the production of roots, raindrops, and leaves, I would not be. So I listen. I listen when that tree speaks to me, that tree over there you see. It tells me to spread my branches and to shake my leaves, to inhale this gift of oxygen and breathe as I please.
Well done. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Now, let's consider this question. What is the future of spoken word poetry? Tim, for the sake of variety, you can start off.
All right. Hey, so I think, as we were talking earlier, how we feel poetry kind of wove into these other genres and influenced and helped other genres, gave some legitimacy to some of these other genres. Maybe there's going to be even a continuing more weaving together and joining together. And I think it'll come from all sides. We celebrated kind of a big moment for some new fans of poetry with Amanda Gorman. So that's an angle kind of coming from the highest of our government. We have like a pro poetry sentiment on board right now at the moment. And then I think, academia, I believe they're already starting in some colleges to have these hybrid programs that are combining film and poetry or music and poetry. So academia will continue to bend to what the poets are demanding and what we want to suit our needs. And then I think even at the secondary level and in the high schools, just continue these great programs that are going, like the Youth Poet Laureate program, which is the method Amanda Gorman came up through in California, or Poetry Out Loud, or Brave New Voices. And so that's going. Also, I think that maybe just even more in our culture and our music. Oh, and my final point is going to music, is I think that maybe there'll be even more vocalists who are insisting that, hey, we're leaning more toward these ideas. There's an idea in hip hop of the backpacker who's rapping with all the weights of the world on their shoulders. Maybe that'll continue to be enhanced, so that you have even more of these even more poetic lyrics and all, because some other like indie folk, which I like, could use some more poetic lyrics. There's some genres that could use some beefing up. And so I think maybe with just even more poetry, even more places is my future, is what I'm hoping for.
Agreed. Christena, impart your predictions.
Well, definitely spoken word poetry, it's growing globally. And Jamaica is definitely taking on the trend. And I see like a lot of groups growing, you have like a group called 876 Poetry that I'm a part of a lot of young poets, and they're really taking the storm. And we have like different festivals that is like a revival in Jamaica now, because we have festival like the Jamaica Poetry Festival, like from Yassa Safari, and we have this poem festival. And even in America, you know, I'm in Jamaica, so I'm not much familiar with everything in America. But in terms of the poet organization, People of Extraordinary Talent, you know, organized by Black Eyes. So, and the Sarabita Awards, these are well-known, you know, poet organization, and they are also doing volunteerism, which is, I think, I find interesting as I was speaking about activism. You know, poetry is not just going on stage, it's about going in the communities, it's about speaking up, it's about getting people involved in community development. And you know, Tim talk about Amanda Gorman, you know, that definitely took everybody by storm. Here we are talking about the presidential candidates, their speech, and Amanda Gorman like became the topic. Like everyone in Jamaica was even talking about it. I went on social media. That's another aspect as well. Social media and spoken word poetry, they are going hand in hand. You know, you can't do anything without technology. So that's definitely empowering the movement, and it's really joining people together. As Vino said, you know, really getting people unified. They're like the tree, you know, everywhere you turn, there's trees, and you know, you can't do without trees because trees give us oxygen. So that's what I see spoken word poetry. Like it's basically oxygen. It's for everyone. Thank you.
Definitely concur. I definitely concur. Venus, enlighten us with your views.
Thank you, Christina, for that callback and for reminding me that poetry gives me life, just like trees. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for poetry. I mean, it helps me process my emotions, and it helps me in so many ways. But what is the future of it? What is the future of spoken word and or, you know, poetry in general? And I think that the future of it is that it's gonna continue. There was a time where I felt like people were tired of hearing the poets. They didn't want to hear from us anymore. But because these are, as they say, you know, critical times, and another word for a critical time is a poetic time. And these definitely have been times where people have had to go inward. Some of us were inside for over a year. Some of us still have not come out. But when we do come out, I do believe that people will return to communities that feed their soul, and that allow them to express what they found in the cocoon. And I feel like that is what time we're living in. I believe we're on the edge of an enlightenment era. And this is just a beautiful time to be alive if you can look at and trust and believe that you are here for a reason. And I just want everybody to be able to tell their story, whether it be through poetry on the page or the stage, but just share it, their story with someone. And this is the time to do it. It's a new day. So.
Again, I agree. I definitely agree. Now, briefly, consider this question. Do you have any advice for up-and-coming spoken word artists? Eunice?
If I had advice for a spoken word artist, it would be just remember to find your voice. And a lot of people with me, they're like, oh, just like with you earlier, Bob, you didn't know I had actually started my poem because
I wasn't too sure.
Yeah. I was still in the same voice, which is my voice. But exactly. I've seen a lot of poets who, especially who go into spoken word, they're mimicking someone else's voice or what they think a poet sounds like, and this and that. Like, and I feel like that is something that, you know, I like to help people with is finding their voice, and also finding their signature story. Like the story that sometimes the one you're the most afraid to share is the one that will have the greatest impact. And that is, you know, so that's my advice, is that don't be afraid to tell your story, and don't be afraid to use your actual voice when you speak.
Well said. Tim.
Well, I think one thing to say to a beginning performance poet who wants to get into this, like, is to, when you watch Venus Jones Amen on YouTube, don't expect to be able to do that 5 seconds later, and that's okay. That's the great freeing thing. I think at the beginning, allow yourself to write a bad poem, allow yourself to embrace whatever form technique that feels good and that you're having fun with. I think as soon as you make it like a homework or an assignment or a chore, then it just loses all the joy. So I say first, just focus purely on the joy. And make yourself laugh, or let this accompany your tears, or whatever, whatever it is. And I think whether you share poetry with somebody or not, that there's still benefit just in writing it, just simply in getting it out, whether you put it immediately under your bed and hide it forever, or burn it, as many of my students do. They just burn their stuff after they write it. They're like, it was too terrible, I had to burn it. I'm like, great, you got it out, that's wonderful. But then if you want to then go and start doing the performing stuff, which is what's the nature of our discussion here, I guess my advice is just like, do two things at once. You get to decide what the two things are, and maybe you could take a familiar style of a slam poem that you've heard, but then like, what's your second thing? What is it that you're adding to make it completely you? Just in the way that visual art keeps like borrowing and recircuiting, and then like putting their own stamp on it. And so I think it's fine to borrow what you like from the people you're seeing on YouTube, but then also what's that original thing that makes it only you? And it's the coming together of those two things that would be my advice. That doesn't sound too hard, just two things.
No, not at all. You took the words right out of my mouth. Christena.
I would definitely say be authentic. So you gotta be you, and that's kind of echoing from Venus and Tim. And we have to emphasize it because it's important when you be you. Because in this world, like everyone is trying to imitate someone, and it don't work. Imitation, it doesn't work. But being you and finding your own voice, and also, practice. I believe that, they have a saying that practice become perfect, but for me, practice become consistent. So that's definitely something that I would encourage, individuals, always practice. Another thing is that don't be afraid of constructive criticism or rejections. I get a lot of rejections. And even though I've won like a lot of awards and, write books, I still enter competitions, and guess what? I get rejected. And, I look on it as an opportunity to be better. Sometimes I would email like the publisher and say, what did I do wrong? What do I need to improve on? Sometimes they tell you, depends on, the competition or whatever. And I would say, okay, I'll work on it. You have to have a spirit of receiving these things and to be better. And also, you got to copyright your work. Like, that's like the biggest thing. Like, a lot of people, they don't know about copyright. I know we are all expressive and want to go out there and do our thing, but you have to protect your work because sooner or later, royalties will be coming in. And that's the time when, people realize, oh, I don't own my work. And, so you have to be mindful of that. And definitely read a lot. Reading to help you in terms of your vocabulary. And, for me, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, like watch people perform just to help me on stage. And also, you can go to like different forums and stuff like that, because I'm not a trained poet, or, I didn't go to school and learn even like literature and stuff like that. I normally go to like the festivals and I watch people like Muta Baruka. And then, when I went on stage for the first time, I was so nervous I could not speak. But over a period of time going on stage, I realized I started finding my voice and started finding my confidence. And then I realized, it really takes time and it takes practice. And, I would say, don't be discouraged. Just continue and push on.
Exactly. Well done. Now, since I believe everyone should become familiar with the work of each of you, let me take this moment to say that readers can obtain books by Venus Jones, Tim Staley, and Christena Williams through Amazon. For more information about Venus, visit venusjones.com. Also, Tim Staley's latest book can be obtained by contacting Beatlick Press. With great sincerity, I am glad that we had this meeting of the minds. Aside from being very informative, each of you made this into an entertaining experience. You are all important contributors to the poetic genre.
How do we find Christena's work?
Yes, well, she is on Amazon.com.
Oh, that's
Is there another source?
I sent you an updated.
Did you now? Okay.
But I guess you didn't see that email.
Unfortunately, no. Is there something that you'd like to share with the audience?
So I'm on Facebook and you can look up Christena Williams. So that's spelled Christena. I'm also on Instagram and it's the title of my book, Pearls Among Stones. And I'm on YouTube and you can just look up Antonia Valier and that's spelled ANTONIAVALAIRE.
Very good. Thank you. Well, at this point, I'm going to close with a poem titled A Versified Voyage. Another boy grew up by the Hudson River with a firm earth sign, a promising limb on an African tree. And the thinker, his archetype, sat beneath his unburdened brow. 24 seasons later, the child scrutinized Harlem, the Lost Tribes, Jerusalem, and like Langston Hughes, East 127th Street Shakespeare, the boy embraced his race. At 54 seasons, the boy became a knowledge-consuming entity, learning about African rhythmic prose, odes, Bantu, Zulu, Malinke, Yoruba, south of the Sahara songs. The child traveled the geography of his mentality with David Diop, Dadi, Césaire, and Senghor, poets who created the seeds that became Afrocentric breeds. To the boy, these poets were sight-igniting keys. By applying those keys, he opened doors to vistas where Black people were birthing a renown-bound future, eluding adults' brimstone sizzling stress. Beneath a dirt antiquated tree, he studied comfortably and saw the spirits of the pundits. 55 seasons, with his ever-present pen and paper, he was runner in a race inspired. Those were his sight-igniting keys. By applying those keys, the child and a page converged, and an aged griot emerged.
All right.
Mind you, that piece is from my chapbook, Verses of Realness, which Underground Books is going to publish soon. Again, Venus, Tim, and Christena, thank you all for being brilliant beings. Moreover, thank you, Max Rodriguez, for making this program possible. Finally, we should thank those individuals who care enough about art and culture to buy our books and view a well-meaning program like this. Thank you.